and death. And people would rather speak in public than talk about death. So just a bit of housekeeping here. In case of an emergency or extreme emotional overload, the exits are in the rear and to the side. It's not labeled. Don't go this way. And if you can't get out and you have to stay and listen to this, we'll have attendants circulating through the room with earplugs for sale. They're $6 each, and you will probably want a pair, unless you only want to half listen. And we take credit card only. So let's get busy. Let's talk about this. So what is it that we're talking about? What is grief, loss, heartache? It's a natural response that we have to loss of any kind. Loss of trust, loss of a job, many hundreds of different experiences. And everyone's experience is unique. I went to a funeral several years ago for a colleague of mine, and I liked him a lot. He was one of my mentors. And I'm going through the line afterwards, consoling the wife and the daughter who were there. I'm so sorry for your loss, so sorry for your loss. And they looked at me. And I found out later that she hated him. So we assume that when a spouse dies, it's a sad event. But we don't know what your experience is. I had a client who was grieving the loss of her pet chicken. And people made fun of it for a while. But there was an emotional attachment to that animal. It was important to her. And so we can't compare losses with anyone else. And our experiences, our responses are unique too, and often inappropriate. And we'll leave it at that. So we don't get to be where we are today as adults and not have experienced loss or many losses in our life. Raise your hand if you have lost a parent, either recently or in the distant past. Raise your hand if you've lost a sibling. Raise your hand if you have had cancer or know someone who's had cancer in your family. And I think I've gotten just about everyone now. Tough one. Raise your hand if you've lost a child. Thank you for sharing. It's hard. These are the events in our life. These are the loss events in our life that we define our lives by. We say we are. Like I said in the intro, I used to say I was shy. That was a story I told. I'm the father of a dead child. That was a story I told myself. Does it have to be that way? I can't change the events of the past, but I can change my relationship to those events. And grief, sorrow, doesn't go away by itself. There's a false claim that time heals all wounds. It doesn't. It just makes it, we just become used to it. So, here are some of the events that happen in life. And we, in our workshops, we liken our lives to a tornado, and isn't it that way most of the time? And you notice cancer, death, empty nesting, if your kids have left. Death of a pet is important to many, many people. But retirement, graduation are on there. How can those be lost? People don't think of good things as loss. But when you graduate, remember when you graduated. You may have left the nest. You're out on your own. You're making decisions on your own. You're moving from an environment that you're used to something new. So as human beings, we don't like change very much. We say we do, but we like orderliness. And so these are many of the events that define our lives. We often tell stories about this is who I am. This is just events that have happened in our life. And so in our workshops, we often do this is called we call this the life review. And in order for us to heal from past losses, we make a chart of the significant events of our lives, because the significant events are the ones to remember. And that's how I define significant. Somebody asked me, well, should I put it on the list? Do you remember it? Then it's significant. And there's a lot below the line. We have the middle line, which is neutral. Below the line is negative, things we judge as negative. Above the line, positive. And the healing is done below the line. But we also we want a balanced view of our life, and we put above the line stuff too. Because we want to remember that good things happened in our lives. There was a time when I was very despondent. Well, actually, this is my life review. And this is, see, it almost goes off the chart. Very negative event in my life. And somebody said to me, well, you just need to find something to be grateful for. And I would be grateful if I could strangle you and kick you, and, because I didn't want to be alive at the time. How could I find something that I was grateful for? So we have our clients fold it in half. And when we're doing our work, we work below the line. That's where the healing is. But I tell them, turn it over and look. Your life had, when you're in the darkest spots, only look above the line. You wrote it down. Something good happened. Something good happened in your life in the past. Something good will happen in your life again. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a doctor who spent her entire career working with death and dying. She was a pioneer in the hospice movement. And she coined the phrase, or the 5 stages of grief. And later in her life, she lamented that she said it that way, because people took it as, I will go through these 5 stages. I will be angry, and then I will try to bargain, and then I will do this, and the 5 stages and get to acceptance. And that's not how it works. And this, continuing our tornado, is how grief really works. We get caught up in the spiral, often of blame. I think blame is in there somewhere. Yeah, blame is in there. Anger. I love denial. I see it all the time. How you doing? I'm fine. Everything's just fine. And, well, no, it's not. It's not fine. And unless you work the process, you get stuck. Often get stuck in that tornado. And here are some of the ways that, I'm going to do this one first. We're either, most people are about in the middle of this tornado. They're somewhere between apathy and courage and acceptance. That's kind of where most people go. But when we do the work that I'm suggesting, the heartache to happiness work, we have the opportunity to move to joy, peace, love, and then a state called living, loving. That's what I called it. I coined that phrase. It's a place where you live from that peaceful, loving center that's inside of every one of us, but it gets covered up by life, all of the losses that we have. And when you see people in depression going down, they're going down the tornado. They're going through anger, guilt, shame. Guilt and shame are huge. Grief, and then finally death. And I'm convinced, I had a family member who lost his job, lost his marriage, and he was so despondent, he manifested a heart attack for himself. And I think it's the grief that built up. And if people don't believe that it manifests in your body, let's talk about ulcers. That's the easiest one. Ulcers are the result of often of stress. We create those through our mental imaging. So we're either moving up in the tornado or down in the tornado. So how do most people deal with grief and loss? We pretend it didn't happen. So I told you that I was withdrawn when I was a child. When I was 9 years old, I found my father passed out in the car. And they dragged him out of the car and took him off to the hospital. And the kids were whisked away somewhere else. And eventually my mother came in and her response was, "Your father's gone." That was it. That's how we deal with it. Your father's gone, time to move on. My uncle told me, "You're the man in the house now, you got to take care of your mom." And then he added, "Don't worry too much. He didn't suffer. It was just as if he went to sleep." And it wasn't until I started doing this work 15 years ago that I discovered why I had trouble sleeping all of my life. These are the stories that each and every one of us take in from our childhood, and we bring them forward into adulthood. Unconsciously, mostly. And when you're a child, you don't have the cognitive abilities to sort all of that out. So it's later in adulthood when one of our family members is on her 5th marriage or 6th marriage. It's hard to keep up. And if you ask me, all the guys are the same. Because she doesn't learn the lessons. So, eating. Who likes to eat? Who likes to sit in front of the television and eat all night long? Who loves ice cream? Mine of choice. Anger. Oh, anger is one way to keep people away. When I was doing the therapy thing, my therapist told me I was like hugging a cactus. It's very effective at keeping people away from you. Because I had so many loss events, I felt abandoned. I felt like people were betraying me. So how do you stop that? You put up a wall. In my case, it was cactus. I like cactus. Uh, serial relationships, alcohol. Alcohol and drugs are a symptom, they're not the cause. We love fighting the cause. This is, for some people I know that may even be in the room tonight, workaholics. If I just keep moving forward, if I just move faster, now I'm moving to this side of the room so I can get on both sides of the room, right? And I just move fast enough, my problems won't catch up with me. I just go faster. Let me just do more. Well, do more. Do more. And then some people like shopping. And then they have big credit card debts. So, this is a TV show I did a few years ago, and this is the cost of not dealing with your issues. It's a short video.
Many people go through life unaware that they have these issues inside of them. We believe that anything that upsets your peace is an issue, and it usually has a thread that leads back to one of these major issues. So up here I have some baggage that we carry around, and some of us carry around all the time. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer from the audience to come up and help do a little demonstration for me. So who would like to join me up front? Thank you. Come on up. So do any of these issues resonate with you at all? Do you have a dysfunctional family? Okay. All right, well, why don't you hold on to this? Okay. It's heavy? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes carrying around this stuff can be a little heavy. Do you worry about money? I do. Okay. Yeah. Why don't you take that? Divorce or separation? Relationship challenges? Okay. Loss of a job? Death of a loved one? Loss of a job. No, loss of a job, okay. You can take that, yeah. Anyone loss of health or have cancer in your family? Okay, we'll give that one up. You've lost a relationship? Yeah. In the past, yeah. You think you might still have some energy around that? Just a little bit, maybe. Okay, well, we'll put that one up there, yeah. Job stressful? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah, there, you got quite a few things there. This is abuse, yeah. You know? Emotional. Emotional, okay. All right, there you go. Yeah. And now we got one more here. It doesn't have any label on it. It's that mystery one that you just can't get a handle on. There's something going on inside that you don't know what it is. Yeah, you know what it is. Yeah, enough to handle? Okay, can you handle all that? Maybe. We do all day, every day. We carry all of this stuff as baggage around with us. I got some other things for you here. Got true love and loving relationships. But it looks like your hands are pretty full. Yeah, I don't know if there's enough room for this with all of the knees. Yeah, I don't think that a loving relationship would go too well between your knees. How about success? You know, financial abundance and success doesn't go too well with money worries. No? I don't know if you can have inner peace. Well, we can try to put these on here. Okay. Sorry. Life is like that sometimes, you know. You try to carry so much that it just overflows and falls all over the place. Life can be overwhelming. So if you're carrying around energy or worries or distress about any of these other things, it's a lot more difficult to have success or love or inner peace because they're not compatible with being a victim of dysfunctional families or relationship challenges. So thank you very much for helping me with this demonstration. Would you like to give up some of these troubles? Yeah. And sometimes it's just as easy as that, to let go of them. Pretty handy, huh? Yeah. Well, big hand for...
So, how many of you are aware that you've carried some of these things around? Raise your hand. Yeah, all of us. Just about all of us. Because that's the way life is. And as we do the work and release this, then new stuff comes in. Because our world, our society is set up in a negative way. Negative messages come in all the time. There's a saying in the news, if it leads, it leads. Mm-hmm. So what it's about is scaring us and making us fearful of what might happen to us. So all of us have had these events happen of some sort. Because I think everyone in the room raised their hand when I asked. We can't change the events. As much as we wish we could, we can't change events. But we can change how we view the events. I'm going to go back to the first one. Quite personal. My daughter, many of you know, died of cancer. And it was the most horrific thing that ever happened to me. Having to sit at her bedside as she passed. And it took me about 11 years to get to the point where I can say, and it's honest, it was the most magical event of my life. I am so blessed to have been chosen to be her father, to guide her through her experience, and her passing was mystical. Now that's changing how I view the events. And that was a lot of hard work. It was more than a lot of hard work. And it's what we teach in our workshops, and I wrote it in the book. This is what saved my life. Because somebody asked me after I went through all of that, how come you're so happy? Well, sometimes I'm happy, and some of you know I'm pretty grumpy, but that's just a facade too. And I had to think about it, and I go, what did I do? So I wrote it down. That's what I did. Your healing isn't dependent on anyone else. And this is when my wife and I separated, and your friends start choosing up sides, who's right and who's wrong, and they were saying that, and I got it just like boom, like that. Wait a minute, that's not helping me at all. Revenge doesn't help me. Bad talking someone else doesn't help me, and I became very selfish. I want to live and be happy. And I actually made a statement was, I'm either going to find the secret to happiness or I'm going to die. And I don't care which one. Well, I'm still here, so I guess I found the secret to happiness. And I wrote it in the book, and it's only $10. And there's no magic to it. Healing is your willingness to do the work necessary to release yourself from the past. In school we call it healing is the application of loving to the parts inside that hurt. So you don't get better by beating other people up, including yourself. You get better by learning to love who you are, no matter who you are. And I guarantee you that every one of us in this room and everywhere else, at their core, is a loving person. And you don't need to learn how to be loving. You just need to learn how to release the garbage that we put on ourselves. So here are some of the tools that we use. we start with awareness. That's our life map that we start. Where am I? What has happened to me? Why am I holding on to this? And setting an intention is an important thing. I intend to get better. The life review. The art of the reframe, I already demonstrated that with my daughter, the reframe. And this is big, and I wrote, just like that's the chapter in a book. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. And people get so hung up on, I wish I would have, I wish you could have, I wish you would have done this, I wish you wouldn't have done this, I wish I could have done this. And so we have a whole process that we suggest going through of articulating all of the woulda, shoulda, couldas that you're holding on to. Because if you articulate them, what we're saying is we get them up and out of ourselves. I'm all about self-forgiveness. Most programs teach you to forgive. And forgiveness is laden with judgment. I'm a better person, so I'm going to forgive you and let you off the hook. That's a judgment. That's not healing. Self-forgiveness is, I'm forgiving myself for holding on to that judgment. I'm letting go of that judgment because I don't want that. And affirmations are rewriting the negative program we put into ourselves. We spend the whole evening on that. And completing incomplete communications. This is really important for anyone, but particularly for couples. Because when you leave your home in the morning, are you complete with your loved one? If not, why? Could be as simple as, I love you, you make a difference in my life. Have a great day. Because at some point, and we saw that today again, some people aren't coming home. And what was the last thing you said to a loved one? Bring home a damn gallon of milk. My favorite. Mirror, mirror on the wall. You know how that one goes, right? Most of you know that. Mirror, mirror on the wall. But this is an awareness I had. It was like this aha moment. And I was looking in the mirror getting ready for work. You know, you are my worst enemy. If I talk to my friends the way that you talk to me, I wouldn't have any friends at all. Sometimes, because sometimes I'm nice to myself, but often it's we beat out of ourselves. Who beats themselves up? Raise your hand, admit it. We often do that. So I call this mirror, mirror. And there's an old Cherokee, I heard it as a Cherokee story. Grandfather is talking to his grandson. He said, there are two wolves that live inside of us. One is anger and envy and sorrow and regret and all of that. And the other is love, peace, empathy, and generosity. And the grandson thought for a moment and asked his grandfather, Grandfather, who wins? Which wolf wins? And he answered, the one you feed. So are you feeding yourself negative messages or positive messages? And this is for Kara and I. We talked to her about this before. I had a difficult time finding sine waves. Many people use affirmations and they say, I'm going to have $1 million. And then they get a little better at it and go, well, we better make it in the present tense. Oh, I have $1 million. And that's wonderful. And they don't have $1 million, and they probably never will because it's not effective. This sine wave is a reminder of we have nice things we say about ourselves and bad things we say about ourselves. And in order to cancel out the bad things, you have to say something nice. So canceled out becomes neutral. These are effective affirmations when they counteract the negative messaging we give ourselves. So what are some of the negative things you say to yourself? Who wants to be brave? Just shout it out. I'm worthless, you know. How about in the back? What?
Well, I want to be brave.
Oh, well, you are brave. You raised your hand. Yeah.
Not good enough.
You're not good enough. No, you're not, are you? Because who says so?
I think
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. What else?
I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I like that one. I think I'll use it. So, where do these come from? Where did we learn this stuff? From our parents, from our relatives, from our teachers, and from our so-called friends? Remember growing up in grade school, even high school, how mean we were to each other? Well, I thought it was just everyone else being mean to me. But when I went back later, I discovered that it's everyone being mean to each other. It's just the way it is. And from our parents. They don't often mean to be negative. It just comes out that way. Now, I have one that I'll share. You'll never amount to anything. My mother told me that. You'll never amount to anything. Well, that's only half true. Because when I now remember it, she said, if you don't apply yourself, you'll never amount to anything. But what was the message I took in?
The last half.
The last half, the negative part. I'll never amount to anything. And I wanted to prove her right. So the negative messages, so there it is. You'll never amount to anything. You're such a bitter, angry young man. Well, I'm not young anymore, and I'm not quite so bitter, but...
Or young.
Yes.
Or young.
Yeah, I'm not so young anymore. I'm as young as I want to be. So, you know, when I look in the mirror now,
You're young.
I'm young. I'm handsome. I'm debonair. We'll leave it at that.
Other people like
And, you know, like you're like hugging a cactus. These are the messages that I got. You're worthless. Why are you worthless? No one ever said that directly, but it's a message that came in. People die on you, they leave you. You're so judgmental. Well, if you're in the blame game, yes, you're judgmental. You blame everybody for everything else. I didn't know a better way. Oh, you're so stupid. Who's ever said that? Oh, you're so stupid. I'm the only one there. Oh man, now I feel stupid. So, we spend a whole night on this just to get started, because these messages have to be counteracted. All of the other work has to be done. There's 12 processes we use in our workshops, but this is one that I like to do the most. So I ask people to come up with an affirmation. What are the 3 words? What are the 3 most negative things you say? And we'll only go through one here. One of the words on my list is worthless. I own it. I used to say I was worthless. See it? You're worthless. It's even telling me. The dictionary, I love the dictionary sometimes. The opposite of worthless is valuable or worthwhile or worthy, which. But we're not interested in dictionary definitions. So, you're worthless. To me, the opposite of worthless is magnificent. And I've worked with affirmations so long, I have a really long affirmation. I'll even tell you what it is. And then you can see it. I am a magnificent, accepting, gentle man, sharing my passionate heart with you. I told myself that a million times until I actually believed it. Now, and watch this as my experiment. I don't have to say the whole thing anymore. Magnificent. Yeah, I can't say the word magnificent now without changing my demeanor. It's just part of me now. So if I get down on myself, magnificent. Just is. Mark, what was the one that you offered up?
I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. So what would be the opposite of that? Competent?
Competence.
But what is the word that, we call it resonate? Some people call it, it's got some juice.
Capable.
Astronaut.
No, it's competence. If you've heard Gene Kern's
Yeah.
Right,
Gene
yeah.
talk about competence.
Tough and competent? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if it works, it works.
Yeah.
So this is the power that words have on us. And those are mine, my originals. Anyone else want to share a word that's negative? And we'll work you into a positive word. You only need one word, and then you'll be happy the rest of your life, right? What?
Death.
Deaf?
Death.
This goes beyond this single word. I've been hearing impaired all my life. I am deaf in one ear. And I judge myself for it. But the turnaround, I learned to listen better than anyone else. When I sit with somebody, I'm with them. I'm with you. Because I have to be, but I'm trained for it. So, what's the turnaround for you?
Connected.
Connected. There you go. So tell yourself, I'm connected 1,000 times, 100 times a day for the rest of your life. We are a work in progress. Anyone else? Yeah.
Fake. Fake.
Fake?
Fake.
Fake. Oh, yes, you are. Our personalities are just what we say they are. So, fake.
I came up with the word while you were talking to Karen.
Wonderful. That's a great word. I guess.
The other, yeah, authentic.
Authentic. There you go.
That's a good.
Absolutely. Because it's whatever resonates with you. Authentic. It's a wonderful word. Linda, you had one? Oh, she's going. The propeller of life.
She's very authentic over there.
Authentic. Wonderful. Okay. So I have guidelines for living. I have to move on because the propeller of life is thrusting me forward.
It's the truth.
And I don't do rules. I hate rules. You break a rule, you get in trouble. And then it's all over. But a guideline, if you get off, you just get back on track. So you got to commit to yourself to do this work. This means on the physical level, on the mental level, on the emotional level, which is most of what we do in the workshops, and whatever your spiritual connection is to you. This is like, duh, do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And we have to remind ourselves to do that because we're creatures of habit. I walk down the same street every day and fall in the same hole. I'm just used to it. If it doesn't work, try something different. This is an attitude towards life. Use everything for your growth and learning. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. Use it. What can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? How can I be a better person from this? And practice the art of inner peace. And that's releasing that loving heart that's inside each and every one of us. In closing, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Healing is an active process. It takes intention, attention, and time. And the value you receive from anything is equal to the commitment and follow-through that you make for it. And that's me. Connect with me. I'd love to talk with you. And do I give it to Linda?
Yes. Yep.
Really quick evaluations, and you can write more information on your balloting form to provide to Bill as well. Who wants to go? Who hasn't gone yet? Mark.
Here, you wanna hold that?
Suppose.
Teamwork.
Yeah, you can.
He notices a little thing.
Bill, that was a wonderful speech. You have a great presence on stage. When you're standing to the side and being introduced, remember that you're on stage. You didn't do anything untoward, but remember that you are on stage. If you're behind the curtain, you can talk to the other presenter. Just something to remember. You gave a lot of great information. I understood this to be a workshop or a mini workshop. I got a lot of, we do this in the workshop, we do this in the workshop, and it took a while to get there. And I was waiting with bated breath for what actually we were going to talk about. We talked a lot about the stuff surrounding it. If you were to do this again in this time frame, I'd get to the meat a little bit sooner. But it was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Next.
First of all, I want to go on record and saying qualifying speeches should probably only be 20 minutes.
It's 20 to 45.
Huh?
20 to 45.
20, 45.
Yep, 20 to 45.
Because I never heard the top slide. I mean, it could be 3 hours long.
Nope.
Okay, well, I thought the opening could have been a lot stronger. Maybe even gave a story that might have felt grief in it. Although I really felt it when you talked about the lady with the emotional loss of a chicken. I really felt some grief there. I'm not a chicken fan, and I actually had chicken for lunch. I still felt grief. And in the closing, in the time frame, I thought maybe some examples how you work with people. Instead of talking about the workshop, how you work with people one-on-one, and some of the solutions to help them overcome their grieving. I thought that would have been probably a good idea too.
Thank you for sharing.
One more.
A lot of things opened up for me in your speech, and you had me at when you opened up in vulnerability and allowed me to express myself, and allowed us to express ourselves. And I agree with, so I acknowledge you for that. And it set the tonality about your passion and your craft, and I'm very, I want to connect with you now. But I agree with Mark. I was waiting for the meat, and it was a little bit delayed. That's what it got me. The information was there. I love the slides as well too. That was very easy to understand, and I took a lot of pictures because it was just great. And yeah, I would just invite you to have the meat and a little bit more towards like the middle.
different. This may have been tried before, but we're gonna kick it off again this year and see what happens. Glenn is going to talk to you about tips and tricks process. We're going to start, everybody, qualified speakers will get a chance to speak at each meeting. We'll rotate it around. So Glenn received his DTM in 2012 and qualified speaker designation August 2017. He joined West Winds Toastmasters in Covina December 2002.